I mean, if you guys want me to teach 440 stuff in this class, it's good too. But yeah, it basically started recording, and then just a little bit into the recording, it would just crash. And I'm really guessing it is the USB cable. So next time I'll use a shorter one and see if it fixes the problem. Okay. All right. So we talked about TinyDB and how to use the concept of a list so that we can actually store multiple values into one single TinyDB variable last time. Okay. I hope you guys still remember that discussion. Sort of? Yes? Okay. So what I want to do to start off today is not really to go back to this yet. Okay, we will go back to it because it is important. But instead I'll talk about what kind of apps are now in the market, and also how processors have found their way into things that you normally would not think is processor powered. Okay? So don't give the class any hints because you were in the previous class. The Oral-B thing, yeah. So over the weekend, I was shopping for a new electric brush, because unfortunately, Oral-B does not make their toothbrush, the rechargeable ones, so they can replace the rechargeable battery. Okay, even though it's just a normal nickel metal hydride battery, it's a AA size. They soldered that thing in place with a tab, so you cannot just change it. And it takes a lot of work just to get it out to, and then putting it back in is almost impossible. So I had to shop for another toothbrush, and so I found the really inexpensive ones for $11 or so. So these are the ones where you use a non-rechargeable type battery or just any type of AA cell. You put it in, you kind of clip on the end cap, and you're ready to go. Really good for camping because you don't need a charger. Okay, when you run out, just go get another pair of AA batteries, and you're ready to go again. And then I also went for the kind of higher end products and go like, okay, so let's see what kind of fancy stuff you can get if you don't mind paying like $150 or so. So they have one that is Bluetooth enabled. So we are talking about a toothbrush that is Bluetooth enabled. And it comes with its own display at the base as a charging station that has a timer, and then which part of your mouth you should be brushing at that time. Okay, but you can also like use your phone or tablet and have your toothbrush to talk to your tablet to give you the timer and also the quadrant that you're supposed to be brushing at that time. So for those of you who are interested, you can look it up.
That's
it's
$11.
Huh?
That's the $11 one.
Oh, that's not the $11 one. This is let me see. It's Oral-B Bluetooth. Okay, that should find it. Oral-B with Bluetooth. There we go. Which is kind of interesting because it's a toothbrush. It will make your teeth blue, I guess.
I remember hearing about those. Tell you how long to brush and stuff.
Yeah, well, okay. So let me just kind of magnify this a little bit. Oh man, this is a bitmap. That's not a very good website. It's not really okay. So I'm not sure whether you guys can read this part or not. It says focus brushing on your most important area with unique adjustable settings. Tracks your progress over time with intuitive graphs and charts. Motivates you with helpful reminders, recommendations, and rewards. In other words, it's almost like playing a game. It's like Pokemon Go. You can get your XP, for brushing your teeth. If you brush it well enough, you can get like bonus XP, like great brush, nice brush, excellent brush, plus 50 XP. And then senses, when you brush too hard, the pressure sensor alert. So the toothbrush itself has a sensor, so it can tell whether you're pressing too hard or not hard enough and stuff like that. Well, there you go. Yes, go ahead.
Can I keep track of my kids brushing?
Well, I think that's a far more useful thing, is to have it, not to have an interface to your kids. You can just tell, okay, how long, and also a accelerometer just to see whether they just turn on the brush and put it on the counter, right? Because if they go through the motion to kind of turn it so that to pretend they're actually brushing, they might as well just brush, right? So they're not going to cheat, by just putting the brush in different positions to emulate brushing. Because if they did that, they might as well just brush their teeth. They're going to turn it on, put it on the counter, and go like, and then run water over it so that it's wet. As a parent, I know all the tricks. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Somebody had a comment. No? Okay. But this is kind of important as far as we are concerned, because maybe not necessarily in the context of this class, but in the context of app development, this is open. This is basically saying, okay, your app itself may connect to a different product. It just adds value to the other product. Okay, but that's one really important aspect of app development is adding value to something else that you're selling. You may not be charging money. I think Oral-B is not making any money from selling the app. The app is probably free. Okay, you can download it for free and install it for free with no okay, maybe with some in-app purchase like your brush head and stuff like that. But they're not going to make much money out of it. Okay, but it does enable Oral-B to say, look at this Sonic hair, you don't have Bluetooth, capability. And it would not be long, because, I'm kind of surprised that it doesn't have a way to track the remaining life of a brush. Because that's easy, okay? Because it already knows when it's on, when it's off. They can just add up all the time and just say on the average a brush needs replacement after this number of minutes of use, and that would be a great feature because people don't.
Yeah.
It's an easy fix and it's
a seller. It's going to help sell. They'll know exactly what.
And it can tie in maybe even to Amazon so that it can automatically order, okay? So that you will never run out, okay? Because when you're about to run out, 3 days before it runs out, it will order. So you always get the new one in time to replace it. So I think there are a lot of possibilities to enhance products using apps. Yep.
Or it could help you snipe one on eBay.
Well, there we go. Yeah. Or buy one used on Craigslist.
Another thing is that this matching of sensors with apps is kind of a big thing too, right? They're adding little sensors to different places and then
Exactly.
creating the app around.
Now, I'm also surprised that the brush itself does not have a accelerometer in it, because if it had it, they would advertise it. Okay, they would say, okay, we can track the motion of your brushing and we'll make recommendations. It's like, okay, I can see that you're brushing it at this angle, maybe you should consider tilting it this way or some other way. And obviously they don't have that feature, otherwise they would be like really, really advertising it. So there are lots of possibilities, and I think they're not even close to exploiting technology to the fullest at this point. Okay, so this is just something that I want to bring out. Well, it's kind of entertaining, okay, but at the same time, it also illustrates how you can use an app in the context of just selling other products, something that has nothing to do with apps. You just use an app to make it more feature rich. Like golf clubs, okay, golf clubs with sensors. They can definitely be used as a trainer, for one thing. You can also log, like, okay, I made this swing, and it's a great, this is a great swing, for whatever reason. So you can get back in time and look at your log and be able to differentiate what makes a great, swing a swing, and then what makes it suck, what makes, something not effective. You can look at the log data and be able to tell, oh, okay, I can see, what the difference is. Okay, because they can put sensors everywhere. They can put multiple sensors on the club itself to detect acceleration. They can even put a force sensor onto the grip, so they can actually tell how hard you're gripping and where you're gripping on the handle. I mean, that's all technology that is already in existence. It's nothing new. So when you combine all that data in real time, or be able to log it and be able to review it, I think it's going to be very helpful, especially to people who teach how to golf. They can utilize all this data and offer added value in coaching.
Yeah, I guess every sport like the bat can have sensors. The
Oh, yeah.
soccer ball can have sensors.
Yep.
People in each one.
Yep, we're getting to the point where the sensors and the processors are inexpensive enough to be integrated into all kinds of products. So it's interesting. I mean, even like cooking pans. I mean, you can put a sensor, okay, into the pan itself, multiple sensors, so it can tell the temperature inside the pan itself, and then you can have all the sensitive electronics in the handle, so it's not going to burn up. So now you can have your Bluetooth connectivity to a cell phone, so that you can tell exactly how hot your wok is, depending on what you're cooking. You can tell, okay, is it at the right temperature? Should I wait a little bit more before I put in my ingredients and whatnot? You can also tell when it's about to burn, because when all the water and moisture evaporates, the temperature is going to go up very quickly. So your phone can actually alert you and say, okay, your pot is going to burn in 3 minutes. It can even turn on the smoke detector before the smoke happens. We'll call it pre-smoke, right? Pre-smoke alarm, as opposed to pre-crime. The Minority Report. Okay.
I was hoping that series would be a little bit better.
Sorry?
They came out with a series for it, but we watched like a few episodes and it was so-so.
That usually happens, like Total Recall, same thing.
There's a series that's kind of like Minority Report. It's called Psychopaths. You should watch it. It's anime though.
Yeah, it's a lot more disturbing.
It's more realistic because we have pre-crime type things in real life nowadays.
That's true. I agree on the realistic part. Yeah, but that show is so bloody, you can almost smell the blood from your screen. It's like, oh, okay.
You use that as anime?
Yep.
Psychopaths.
Alrighty. So getting back to our app stuff, okay? So last time we left off, discussing the concept of variables, and to be exact, we were talking about, the use of a list. So what we'll do today is to talk about what can you use these lists for? Okay, we know we can store. Okay, we can store into TinyDB because that's something that we looked into last time. Remember, we looked into the file that contains the XML document, and in the XML document, we can find the actual TinyDB entry. Yes. Okay. So, but there are other things you can do with it as well. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do today. Let me go back to the top level of this class and locate screen layout. Okay, but multiple screens in a particular application. Okay, let me find the right portion. Nope, that's not it. Okay. I may not have the notes for this, so that's why the lecture is kind of important, okay? But it is all being recorded. A lot of this stuff, I think, if I were to type it, it's not going to be as effective because it doesn't show how things interact, okay? So we'll go ahead and start off with multiple screen design. How many people are planning to make your app a multiple screen app? Okay, most people, okay? How many apps in the market has a single screen?
No.
Well, not a whole lot of useful apps as a single screen. Yep, go ahead. Oh, sorry?
Sorry, my hand up.
Oh, okay. I thought you had a question or something. Yep.
I hadn't even put any thought onto whether it would be multi-screen or not.
Right. Okay, so why do we, okay, let's get back to the first question. Why do you want to turn your app to use multiple screens instead of a single screen? What is the problem with one single screen?
Space. You can only do one thing.
Well, you can potentially load up everything into a screen and just scroll to locate the part that you need. Angela,
Space.
Space, okay, so a single screen only has so much space, but once again, you can potentially just keep scrolling to get to the part that you want. Yeah.
You can hide things, so it's not necessarily a space issue, right? So when you hide, it takes zero space.
Correct.
But it does become a nightmare for programming.
Yes, it is a nightmare in programming because now you actually have the logic of everything in one single screen, and just by controlling the visibility of the components, you're just exposing the right part. But that means you can also have bugs in your program of hiding which part to hide and which part to make it visible. So you can potentially make your app really, really hard to maintain as you add one more thing to your screen. Then you have to remember where it attaches to, and when to turn it on, when to turn it off, and so on. Okay, what is why don't we want apps that keep scrolling and scrolling?
Well, just one thing is that it's a completely terrible user interface. No user is ever going to be like, yeah, I really love to scroll down 6 times to get to what I need.
But the problem is not just scrolling down 6 times, because if you turn a single screen app into multiple screens, you still have to click to get into a lower, the next screen, the next screen, and the next screen. But there's a difference between scrolling and pressing a button that is on the screen already. What is that difference? From the user's experience perspective, okay, not from the functional perspective. From the user's experience perspective, what is the difference between something where you have to scroll a lot, okay, like use your finger to swipe, 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 oh, okay, there it is, stop, and then click, as opposed to a multi-screen layout where you just click, yes, I want configuration, I'm configuring the list of users, and I want to edit this particular user. What is the difference?
Exactness? Like
Exactness. That's the point, okay? Because when you scroll, you kind of have to keep your eye on what the content is scrolling by, right? And when the right contents flows by, you have to stop the scrolling with precision. So it takes a lot of your attention just to do that. On the other hand, if you do not need scrolling, all the buttons are in the same screen, no scrolling required, then you already know which button to click. Now, assuming when you update your app, you don't change the positioning of the buttons too much, then an end user can just get used to the app and be able to navigate without really looking at the screen very intensely. Okay, just kind of click, oh, okay, I know approximately at least where the button is located. Okay?
Easier to scroll. It's easier to do with one hand.
Yep.
Hard to scroll with your thumb.
Well, you can scroll with your thumb, except it's harder to control it. Okay, so it's not a matter of whether you can do it or not. It is a matter of how much trouble do you have to go through, and especially for people who are aging, okay, or people who have dexterity issues, that can be a problem. Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
The only single screen apps that I can think of besides calculator would be something like Uber, which does exactly one task. You just call your Uber, and that's...
I think even Uber has multiple screens because you have to be able to configure your own preferences, settings, and stuff like that. So I think even Uber has multiple screens.
Alright. Is that menu, like the menu brings up a new screen? Or
Yeah, the menu, basically start of a new screen.
multiple screen?
Yep. Yep. All right. Do you guys have any questions back there? No? Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about, I'm going to write an app that's really easy, okay, from the perspective of what it does. I want to write an app that adds up 2 numbers and display the sum, okay? So we'll do one without using multiple screens, and then we'll do the other one with multiple screens. And then we'll say, okay, is it easy? How much easier is it to turn it into a one screen type of app? So the first one I call it one screen because it's just using one single screen to add up 2 numbers and display the sum. So I think by now it should be fairly easy to do this. In this case, I'm not going to make it fancy. So we'll go ahead and have 2 text boxes. Text box 1, text box 2, and then we'll have a label to display the sum. So we'll pick out a label here, drag and drop, and a button to trigger the operation. So a button will go here. All right. Any questions about the screen layout? So I'm not going to even spend much time to relabel things because I just want to get this done really quickly. So when I go to the blocks, the first thing, where I attach the code to it's going to be the button because it's object-oriented programming. When the button is clicked, I want to do the following. What do I want to do? I want to calculate the sum and then update the label. So assuming that I assume the numbers or the text boxes are numbers to begin with, I can now just say go to label 1 and say, okay, change your text to the sum of the two numbers. So now I go to math and I pick out the summation symbol. I go back to text box 1 and say, give me your text so I can add it. So we go scroll down to the text of text box 1, and then we do the same thing for text box 2. Give me your text so I can add those two. And that's pretty much what I need to do with this app. Going back to the designer screen, I can do one thing to make sure that non-numbers cannot be entered. So I can go to the text boxes, and there is one thing you can click here, which is numbers only. So this way it filters out anything that is not a number. So by turning on numbers only in the text box, I make sure that those text boxes can only have numbers as content. Okay, so that's the end of this app. Okay, it's really easy, and I'm just gonna get the APK file because the next app requires that anyway. So I might as well just start to use this approach here, and then on the other side, I will start up the emulator. So go to my usual folder and say run emulator. Yep.
So if the text boxes are numbers only, does it just not let you input anything other than numbers, or does it
That's
throw
correct.
an error? Or, okay.
It only allows you to enter numerical values.
It pulls up a number-only keyboard.
I guess we'll find out whether it just gives you that. And of course, the positioning of this is just off. Okay, that's okay. We can do it. We'll go ahead and save this file. And upload it. So has anyone tried this approach at home? Running an emulator and use the command line? No? Okay. Sorry?
I was doing it in class last week.
Okay. All right, so we should be online. Oh, it still says it's offline. Yep, it's online now. So it had to finish booting the emulator before it gets online. So now it is online. We say install-r, and then the file is one screen. Okay, it is installed. Once it's installed, it's just like an app. Any other apps, so we have one screen over here. And it does give you more of a general thing, but if I click a $sign, it doesn't let me enter it. So you can only enter numerical values. So I would say add 4 and 3. I think decimal points are allowed, but you're only allowed 1 decimal point. If you try to enter a second decimal point, it won't let you do it. So it does, a very simple kind of filtering, as you enter the number, as you enter the text. So in this case, 4.6 plus 3 should be 7.6. So when I click the button, it will update the text, the label to be 7.6. Okay, no big deal, pretty easy app to write. Okay, so now I want to turn this into a dual screen app. Okay, it has 2 screens, where the first screen will display the text boxes, collect the numbers. The second screen doesn't do a single thing except to do the computation. But once it's done with the computation, it will return the result back to the first screen, so the first screen has to display the answer. Okay? So if you look at the picture, okay, this is the picture. Okay, this is screen 1. Screen 1 has 2 text boxes, just like the app that we have at this point. And then you click a button that says add these 2 numbers, right? So then it will switch to the second screen. The second screen will just display a message for 2 seconds. Okay, it will just say thinking for 2 seconds, which is far more time than it needs to add those two numbers, right? Then it's not going to display the value. It will send the return value back to the first screen, and then the first screen will use that value to display as the actual sum. So yes, I'm turning something that is really simple into something that is way overcomplicated to illustrate 2 points. Well, I want to illustrate how you can pass information or data from one screen to another screen. Because it seems pretty easy, because it is still the same app, so it would seem that these 2 screens can share values. Well, the truth cannot be further from this. Okay, screens cannot share anything except for the TinyDB that is connected to the application itself. And I don't want to use TinyDB as a conduit to transmit information from one screen to another screen, because it would just be keeping reading and writing files all day long. Okay, so that is not good. So let's take a look at this particular thing and go, okay, how are we going to do this? Now, because the structure of this new app is really the same as the other one, what I'm going to do is to save the project as a different name. So this time we have 2 screen as the name of the project. So now we're going to turn this into a 2-screen approach and say, okay, how can we do something like that? The first thing is we need to add a screen, because we need a second screen. So the moment you click add screen, it should add a screen already. Nope, I guess I didn't click it. Okay, there we go. So it will ask you for a screen name, and you can name this however you want to. Okay, so you can say this is my thinking screen. Click OK, and the name thinking screen is really not going to be what it is displayed, or you can change that. So if you when we switch to thinking screen, okay, the name of the screen is thinking screen, but what you want to display as the title of the screen doesn't have to be thinking screen. So this part here, okay, where it says your title, you can change this to anything you want. Okay, you can just say thinking. Okay, that's perfectly okay. And just to make this more fun, we are going to use a timer so that we can say display this for 2 seconds, okay, before we go back to the first screen. So we'll go ahead and include a timer as a device, which is a clock. Okay, so timer itself does not really exist. It is in the form of a clock. And we'll see, where is it? Here. On the sensor. Yep, here's a clock. Okay. And we also want to make this more fun by displaying the picture of somebody actually thinking in the process. So I'm going to hijack something from the internet and just look for thinking. For images, I like Homer. Homer represents the epitome of thinking. So we'll use this. Okay, so we'll say save. Oh, that's not the same one. It's an image. And we'll save it to the local hard drive. I'll put it into my temp folder. There we go. And then we switch back to App Inventor. And upload an image. Now you can always downsize it before you upload it, just to save some storage in your app. So I'm going to do that. So we'll start up the GIMP. Simple stuff, this is simple stuff that the GIMP can easily deal with. So we'll open the file. Over. Go. So I can crop it at least. So we'll go get a cropping tool. And we want to crop to selection. There we go. And then we'll export the image again. Oh, we don't want to change the scale as well. So we want to go to image again and say scale image. So right now it's 560 pixels by 680 pixels. I think if we just downsize to 300 by 364, that's more than enough. Okay. So now it's time to overwrite the original file because I don't need the original. And discard changes, close the GIMP, and then get back to our app here, upload the image file. There we go. And then we just want to display that. And that would be under user interface. Pick out an image here and change the image picture to the one that we just uploaded. Okay, there we go. And then the rest is up to the code. Okay. So when we switch to the blocks, okay, what are we going to do here? Remember, I need this screen to be doing the actual thinking, which means it needs to know which two numbers we're adding. But those two numbers are in text boxes from screen 1. And if you look down the components here, I don't see any text boxes here. So that means I cannot refer to components of another screen to refer to the content or whatever attributes I want to refer to that is from another screen. So one thing we can do is to do this, okay? So if you click on these things, none of these seems to have anything to do with adding numbers or getting the numbers to add. Image 1 doesn't seem to have anything to do with it. Clock 1 doesn't seem to have anything to do with it. Thinking screen does not seem to have anything to do with it. But it does have an initialize event. In other words, when screen 2 or the thinking screen first starts up, this block of code is guaranteed to execute. Okay? So that gives me a place to attach some code to do something about it. Because otherwise, you know, what event am I going to intercept to do some adding? Well, the timer is one, you know, but this is the other pin. This is the other place. Okay. But remember, I want to add two numbers. Where am I going to get the values? So, well, maybe we need to go back to the other screen to see if we can get some clues. So we go back to screen 1 and go to the blocks. And then we ask the question. Now this time when the button is clicked, you know, I don't want to I don't want to compute anymore because it's the job of the thinking screen to do all the computing. This screen is really just, you know, sending the values to be added to the other screen, wait for the other screen to be done, and then display the number computed by the thinking screen. Okay? So when the button 1 is clicked, I don't want to do any computation. Instead, I want to start the second screen to let it do something, right? So I need to start the second screen, and the logic or the blocks to start another screen is under control. Okay? So when you scroll down in control, you will see two things that seem to be the same but not. Okay? One is called open another screen, and you specify the screen name. One is called open another screen with start value. In other words, it allows you to specify some value that you're passing to the other screen. So this is our ticket to transmit information from one screen to another screen. Okay? It's through the concept of a start value. All right, so we'll pick out this block here and say, let's go ahead and start off another screen. Screen name is really just a string referring to the name of the other screen, which is the same as in the drop-down box here. The second screen is called thinking screen with a lowercase t but an uppercase s. So it's case sensitive. I have to make sure that I use exactly the same name. So now I'll go to text here and just specify a literal string and then specify that name over here. So I just say thinking screen. Like so. And the start value is the problem because it only gives you one value to pass. If you have two values, what are we going to do? Make a list. Okay, very good. So this is why the concept of a list is useful, because when you have multiple things and occasionally you want to treat it as one single thing, a list is very helpful for that sort of thing. So what we're going to do here is just to say, oh, let's package those two numbers into a single list. then it is a quote-unquote single thing. So we'll make a list, and then the two items going into this list here would be the text of text box 1. Okay, so we go to the text of text box 1 and of the text box 2. Okay, so we pick out the text from both of the text boxes and make a list out of it and transmit that list as the start value to thinking screen. This is how we get the information over to the other screen. Are we doing okay so far with this concept here? Okay. Okay, so now that we can transmit that information, how do I make sure the second screen can get it? Okay, in thinking screen, how do I make sure that it can actually get the value? What do you think? Remember, I want the timer I want to display homework for 2 seconds, and then when the timer expires, I want to close this screen to get back to the first one. Okay, so the first thing I need to do here is not really to do any computation. I just want to start a timer. Okay, so I want to go to clock 1 and just make sure that the timer is started at this point. So if you scroll down here, a clock can do a lot of things. I'm not even interested in those things. I just want to make sure it is enabled. So I can say, timer enabled, set it to true. So this way the timer starts. I make sure that it starts when we switch to this screen. Now, there are different attributes to a timer. So when you go to a timer or a clock here, you can control, how long it takes for the timer to expire. In this case, this is measured in milliseconds. 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. If I want it to be 2 seconds, I just specify 2,000 milliseconds. Oops, 200, 2,000. Okay, and in this case, I can turn off, timer enabled. I can turn off timer always fires because the app or the code in blocks is going to enable the timer anyway. So I don't need it to be initially enabled. It doesn't hurt to have it initially enabled. It just doesn't need to be that way. Okay. Are we still doing okay so far with this app? Okay. All right. So when we switch back to the blocks here, the only thing we do when we get to this screen is, okay, let's start the timer. Okay, so the timer starts. After 2 seconds, the timer is going to expire. When the timer expires, it generates an event. Okay, and that's an event that we can intercept. So when we click on clock 1, it says when timer 1 expires. It doesn't quite say that, but this is the meaning of the timer event. When timer has gone off, we're going to do something. Okay, so let's look at all the pieces that we need. When you go to control and scroll down, you can see there's one thing called get start value. Okay, that start value is the very same thing that was sent by open screen with start value blah blah blah. So this is how you get the information that is sent to a particular screen, is to utilize get start value as a block under control. Okay, so we know this one is kind of important. Okay, so let's pick it out. Is that a number? Is that a single number that I can use addition on? No, it's a list of 2 numbers, right? Okay, so what can we do about that? Maybe we can just use a local variable to store the start value, and then we can extract different portions of it. You don't need to do it this way, but it's just a little bit cleaner in terms of code to do it like this. So we'll just say list of 2 numbers, okay? Just to spell out exactly what that thing is supposed to be, okay? All right, then what do we do about this? We have a list of 2 numbers, we're supposed to add those 2. Okay, so let's go to math here, pick out addition. Now we have a problem, because how do I extract a particular component out of a list? Well, yep, exactly. This is the nice thing of App Inventor programming, is everything is listed here. Everything they can possibly to do with a list is listed here. So we just look through all the blocks and say, okay, is this what we want? No, we don't want to create an empty list. Do we want to make a list? No. Do we want to add anything to a list? No. Do we want to check whether something is in a list or not? No. Do we want to know the length of a list? No, we are assuming it's a list of 2 items already. Do we want to check whether a list is empty or not? No. Do we want to pick a random item out of a list? No. Do we want to find the index of a thing in the list? In other words, do you know what value is in the list already? You just need to know the position of the value. No. Do we want to select a particular item in the list? Yes. Bingo. See, but this is how you learn how to use App Inventor. Okay, a lot of this has to do with just explore the different blocks and see, okay, which one makes sense to me? Okay, which one is the one that I need to use in this context? So it says return the item and position index in the list. That's what I want. In fact, I need 2 of these things. Okay, so we'll put all of this stuff here, and then say, okay, which list are we talking about? Oh, that list here that has the start value. Yes, I know this is an error, but we'll fix that later. Okay, it's not a big deal at this point. And which item? This is a list. So when you specify which item in a list you need to access, it starts with a 1. This is not consistent with C and C++ because they like to start counting from 0. But this is App Inventor. It does start counting from 1 instead of 0. Okay? So this is the first item of the list that is passed to me as a start value. And then here's the second one. I'm just duplicating it to save myself some typing. And the value of the index is 2. Okay? So I'm adding these. All right. So then what do I need to do? Well, this is the summation, but I don't want to display the sum in the screen because this screen only shows Homer thinking without actually doing anything. I want to pass this information back to the first screen so that the first screen can display the actual sum, right? Okay, so how do we do that? Can we use the start value again? Now this is a very common mistake, and I'm pretty sure someone is going to do it in this class, despite me telling you, do not do this, okay? Because, yep, go ahead.
Where did you get this get list of 2 numbers?
I hover the pointer over this and select this one. Now it gives me a warning because this block is not inside this block at this point, and this block is not even inside this block here, which is where it belongs to. Okay? Okay, so we don't want to use open screen again. Even though it looks like it accomplishes the same thing, it's not. Okay? So I don't want to use open screen again because I want to say close screen instead. I want to close myself to go back to the previous screen. Yep.
So the first screen is still open?
The first screen is still open, it's just not visible. It's in the background, okay? So when you open another screen, the first screen, the screen that did the opening, it's still there. It is just in the background and not visible. So if in this thinking screen I say open screen 1 again, then I will have multiple versions of screen 1, which is not the intent of this program, okay? So that's not what I want to do. So what I'll do is to go to Control and say, okay, if I don't want to open another screen, what else can I do? Oh, I can close myself. Okay, close screen is not closing another screen, somebody else's screen. It's closing this particular screen. So I can either just close screen and to close the current screen without anything, or I can choose the second one and say close screen with a certain result value. That's what I need to do. So I would pick up this block here and put it inside this thing here and say, I just want to close this screen when the timer expires, and I want this to be my result. Is that okay? So once you close the screen does not exist anymore, okay? So, but it will go back to whatever screens that started this one. Is that okay? All right? All right, so let's go ahead and check this out and see what happens.
So you're starting the timer, you're waiting for the timer to expire before you grab the values that were passed from the
Correct.
previous screen.
Yep.
And then you're closing it right away with the result.
Correct. The value is not displayed anywhere. It has to be displayed by the previous screen. Okay, so I closed the thinking screen, right? having the value calculated. So I'm passing the value back here, which means now the first screen, screen 1, has to know, oh, the screen that I started off 2 seconds ago has now closed. With a result, let me grab that value and print it out. So we have one last little bit of thing to do in screen 1 to finish this entire program. Okay. So now switch back to screen 1 and say, okay, what can we do in this screen to basically say, okay, if the other screen closes, then we can do this. Sounds like an event to me, okay? Because it is something that can happen at any time. Because when the second screen closes, it's up to the second screen. The first screen has no control over that. So that means it's probably an event. And when you look at all the things, it doesn't really belong to any particular event here, any particular component. Well, as it turns out, it belongs to screen 1, because screen 1 is the one that started the other screen in the first place. And you can see this thing here. When screen 1 dot other screen closed, do something. Okay, so let me just read the description on the screen. It says event raised when another screen has closed and control has returned to this screen. This is what I need. Okay. So I'll pick out this event, and then I'll go explain what is the other screen name. Okay. Every screen can only have one other screen closed handle. So imagine that you have one screen, okay, that has the potential to start 5 other screens from this one single screen. Okay, let me just draw the picture so we can visually see it. This is screen 1. Okay, screen 1. And screen 1 has the potential to start 3 different screens. So we call it screen 1, screen 2, sorry, screen 3, and then screen 4. But it only has one handle. It only has one other screen closed handle. So the question is, how can I differentiate between coming back from screen 2, coming back from screen 3, or coming back from screen 4? Because depending on which screen closed to get back to this screen, I might have different things to do. Is that question making any sense? Or why it is important? Okay, now in this case, I only have one screen to start from screen 1, so it's not of any major concern to me. But most apps can start multiple screens, okay, depending on what you want to do. So that's why we have an other screen name here, which reflects the name of the screen that just closed to get back to screen 1. So this time, you can use a conditional statement and basically say, okay, I will perform these operations only if I just got back from thinking screen. So later on, if I have other screens, I can extend the conditional statement to differentiate, okay, I came back from which screen again? That will help me determine what to do. Is that okay? Yep.
So would they all go in the same block?
Yes, they all have to go into the same block. So in order to make my program more general, I'm going to go here and use a conditional statement, because this is the most flexible way to do it. Okay, I just say, okay, if I only have one screen, I will still do the checking. So I'm going to compare the text for equality. And what I'm comparing is the name of the screen that just got closed with the name that I'm expecting, which is thinking screen. So I can duplicate this block here. So when this condition is met, okay, when the name of the screen that just got closed has the name of thinking screen, I'll perform this block of code. There's not really a whole lot to do now. I just go to label 1 and say, let's change the text of label 1 to the result, okay? And the result is here. So we just put the result here. Are there any questions about any one of these pieces?
Is there a way to index the screen so we don't have to use the comparison of text?
Okay, even if you can index, you still need to decide what to do based on the index, right? To index it, you can do it by maintaining a list of the names of the various screens. Then you just look up that list and say, okay, which one is it? So you're basically turning the text value of a screen name into a number. But what are you going to do with that number? You still need to decide what to do with that number, right? So you still end up with some kind of conditional statement that will determine what you need to do based on that number. Is that making any sense?
Yeah.
So instead of using text compare against the name of screens, you'll be using numerical value compare to determine whether the number is 1, 2, 3, 4, or not. So I'm not really sure how much code you're saving that way, because you still have a number and you still have to use that number to determine what you're going to do.
Well, instead of having comparing text, which you can make a typo or something.
That's correct.
Index is much.
Well, the typo thing, there's a way to avoid the typo thing. The way, okay, this is kind of important. I didn't want to include it at this point, but it's okay. I can do it. So if you don't want to make a mistake, what I do, this is what I do. So I just use a global variable to initialize to the value that it is supposed to get. So with this global variable string str thinking screen, which doesn't really serve a whole lot of purposes other than being a constant, now I can get rid of all the other literal text. Okay, I can get rid of this one, and I can get rid of I can get rid of this one here. So I can just use my global variable consistently in both cases. So I go back to here, and I say, okay, let's use the global variable thinking screen and use the same thing over here. So this way, unless I name this incorrectly to begin with, I cannot have inconsistency within the app. Okay, but this is the whole thing. So in order to label, all of these arrows, from here we use the event handler click, okay, to trigger the operation. From the perspective of the starting screen, okay, the block that you need to use is open screen with value. On the other side, when this information is received, it is basically the start value. You utilize the start value to do whatever you need to do. The triggering of this return here to close this screen, the block to do this is the close block under control, okay? When this is closed, it will go back to this screen here, raising the event called when other screen closed. So this is the other screen closed event. So these are the pieces that are important to make this app happen. Are there any questions about this app so far at this point? Yep.
And it's always one value that's passed, so that's why you use a list.
Correct.
So you can pack a bunch of values.
You can pack whatever you want inside, a single list. In other words, you can send a file. Okay? So you go like, well, but I got 20 gazillion things that I want to send. Well, zip it up. Right? So you zip everything into one single zip file and say, well, I only got one file. It's big, but it's one file. And that's the whole concept of a list. It allows you to contain as many things as you want inside it, with structure too. So you can have a list inside a list inside a list, but the whole thing is still considered as one single list as far as a start value is concerned. The same thing applies as the value that is being returned. Now in this case, I only got one number to return. I don't need to use a list. But if this is a complex number or fraction or something like that that has multiple components, I can utilize the concept of a list again to transmit it back to the first screen. Okay? All right. Yep, go ahead.
Can you go back to the other screen?
Yep. The thinking screen. Uh-huh.
Where did you get the set clock one timer enabled?
It's under clock one. Clock one is a component.
Oh, it wasn't pulling it up when I clicked on it last time. Maybe I wasn't clicking it right. Thanks.
No problem. All right. Are there any questions, since we're still looking at the blocks? No questions? All right, well, let's go ahead and see if this works, okay? Because I can claim that this works all day long, but if I cannot show you that it actually works, then it's worthless. And this one is called two screen. Now this is important because if you want one screen to be a configuration thing or setting screen, this is how you can transmit the new settings back to the original screen without using TinyDB. This is a particularly long build.
Will the two screens work in the emulator?
Not if you use Connect. That would be a problem because with the Connect, the second screen you will switch to the second screen as soon as your editing window switches to the second screen, which means the initialized event won't get triggered again. So there are issues with debugging it that way. Okay, this is called two screen, and then we switch back to the text here. And instead of one screen, now we have two screens. And once it's installed, let's go back here. We should have two screens. It says success, but I don't see it here. Okay, go back. Check again. I missed something.
I don't think you changed the app name.
So they're both one screen. Okay. Well, we'll find out, I guess. So we have 5 plus 6. Click it. Nope, that's the first one. Because you guys cannot really see it here, but this is called one screen. This is also called one screen. I just tested this one. It's not what I want. Let's try out this one. There we go. Yep.
And it's right.
Huh? Yes, and Homer is right too. Yes. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Any questions from you guys? Okay. Any questions from you guys? Okay. So can you try not to chat in class, please? Okay. Yep.
So if you were doing like a menu and you brought it on the screen, you could also just do a button that does the close screen.
Yes, you can also use a close screen. Correct.
Okay.
Yep. In fact, let's trigger that using a click, okay, instead of timer. So what I'm doing here is I'm changing this, so that I need a click in order to go back to the previous screen and not to use the timer to do it. So what I can do is I can get rid of the image and use a single huge button to do it. Yep.
Question. So the way that works there is it when you do set clock one timer enable to true, it just it waits there for 2 seconds and then goes on to and does the rest all at once and sends you back.
Right. So that you can think of it as a kitchen timer that is already dialed to 2 seconds, but it has not started. So by saying enable to true with a timer, you start the clicking.
Oh, you did it as a second event when the timer ends.
Right.
Right.
The timer doesn't actually stop the execution.
stop.
The timer, I was looking at it differently because I haven't finished writing it. That's
Oh,
fine. Never
okay.
mind. Sorry.
That's all right. Yep. Go
Can
ahead.
the timers activate a new image before you click the return button?
It can, but then you have to. There are several ways to. Okay, so you're thinking about animating Homer, okay, by using the timer.
Yeah.
Yes, you can, okay, but you have to differentiate then, because you have to count, okay. The first time the timer expired, the second time the timer expired, so you have to use your own logic inside the timer event handler to determine what to do based on that counter. So you can, but it's a little bit more complicated. It does make it more complicated. Yep.
So you could have a timer expire and then have the timer expire again, right? Another event inside the timer.
Correct. So when you look at the timer, it has got two properties. One is timer enabled, and the other one is timer always fires. Now, timer always fires is misleading because to most people, that is what we think, oh, okay, so if I want the timer to expire and then automatically restart, refire again, that's what we want. That's not what it is. Okay? Timer always fires is basically useful when you are in screen 1, for instance. Okay? If you put a clock in screen 1 and you start up the other screen, the thinking screen, but there are certain things you want to do from time to time in screen 1 and you don't want it to stop just because thinking screen is up. That is when you use timer always fires, is when a screen is no longer the front screen, that timer will still go off because by default it does not. So if you have anything to do in the screen that is no longer the front screen, that is one way to trigger that operation in the background, basically. Okay? But once you have timer enabled, after it expires, it always restarts. So once you turn it on, every 2 seconds you will get a timer expiration event.
So it doesn't keep going.
Oh yeah, it keeps going and going.
But could you trigger another timer, another event at 4 seconds?
Can you trigger another event?
Yeah, so you had a timer started and you initialize the screen. And then you did some logic at 2 seconds. Could you do more logic at 4 seconds?
Then you will have to use your own logic within the timer expiration event handler to differentiate. Is this the first time it expires? I need to do this. Is it the second time it expires? I need to do that. Yeah, you will need to track that.
Okay.
Yep. So that makes it a little bit more complicated because you have to count which one it is. Yep, go ahead.
Where was the clock 1 timer expired block?
It's under clock 1. So when you go to blocks, you go to clock 1, it's all the way down. Are you talking about the event handler, or are you talking about?
Yeah.
The event handler is always on the top.
No, where it expires. So there's clock 1 timer always fires, timer enabled, timer interval.
I missed your question.
I'm looking for clock 1 timer expired.
It's that.
It's the time. It's this event.
It says timer.
Oh, it
That's
just
what
says
it
when
doesn't
clock
actually
1
tell you
timer.
when it
Right.
expires.
And this is also an example of having 2 event handlers for the same thing. It's an error. You cannot have that.
Oh, you
Yep. Go
can't.
ahead.
If you want to include an in-app purchase,
Uh-huh.
does this contribute, like, not this specifically, but is there a tab to make in-app purchases somehow?
Well,
To interact
timer
with
is
Google
usually not
Play?
tied into in-app purchases.
No, not this app, per se, just in general, using MIT app.
For in-app purchase?
Yeah, enable the app you're making for in-app purchases.
Well, let's look into that, like after we get this done, okay? Because the in-app purchase is not has nothing to do with the timer. So let me see what I can do to do this to this one to make it more fun. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the button and change the button to a Homer picture. So to do that, you just have to go to image here, specify an image with a button. So now the button, it becomes an image, and I have no use of the text anymore, so we can just remove that. Okay. And let's see. Do you guys want to animate this? So every 2 seconds, it has a little bit of animation. Yep.
What about if you click on Homer and it automatically does the wrong calculation?
It doesn't.
Like sends over, what about if you click on Homer, it sends over some like random information just to just mess up the whole calculation.
Okay, I'll just animate it a little bit, just by alternating between two images, okay? And that is already a little bit complicated because you have to know which timer event you're dealing with, odd number or even number, okay? So we'll do that. Yep.
I have one question. I have on my thinking screen run timer or the operation select list item cannot accept the arguments empty string one.
Okay, so let's
although
leave
the
that.
whole thing is working.
Okay, let's do that during the lab time. So right now I'm gonna finish up this program, adding a little bit of animation to it. So we'll go back to the GIMP here and reopen the file that we have already opened before. So we have open recent Homer, and we'll basically just add something here. I'm gonna add the add symbol on top of Homer's head. So that symbol will blink at a rate of every 2 seconds. Okay, so we'll not overwrite because yeah, let's export as. We don't want to overwrite it. So this is Homer 1, which is the second screen. Okay, so it's exported. We go back to the app here, and we want to upload one more picture of Homer with the add symbol. So every 2 seconds, I want to alternate between those two images. Okay, that's what I want to do. Well, it's not as simple as you think it is. Okay, so this is no longer associated with the timer event. It is now associated with the button click. So that part is easy. Okay, when I need to go back to the previous screen, it's no longer triggered by the timer. It is now triggered by actually clicking the button, which is Homer. But the timer now has a more complicated thing to do because I need to determine which click it is. Okay, and depending on which timer event it is, I need to alternate between those two pictures. So to do that, we need to look at a button and see, okay, what can I use here as a clue as to what to do with it. So apparently I can get the image back, and I'm thinking this is the file name of the image. If that is the case, I can use that to determine which picture I should display next. Okay, it doesn't really say. Okay, this is really misleading because when you hover over, it says image to display on button. It doesn't say whether this is the actual bitmap or it is the name of the bitmap. I'm guessing it is the name of the bitmap. Okay, so I'm gonna use my assumption to write this code. If it doesn't work, then we'll go ahead and change it. Okay, so we know this is important. We know we need a conditional statement to determine which picture is currently being displayed, and we need a text compare to compare the name of the image that is being displayed with the name that I already know, which is homer.png. So we go to text here, select literal name or literal string, and the first one is just homer.png. Okay, so if it is the same, then we want to switch to the next one. If not, we'll switch back to the first one. So now we need to specify an else, okay, because we have something to do if the condition is not true. And then we go back to button 1 and change the name of the image. So if it is already homer1.png, I want it to be homer1.png. If it is not Homer, that means it has to be Homer1, then I want to switch it back to Homer. So we want to duplicate this block here and change this from Homer1 back to Homer. Okay, so, yep, go ahead.
So that will run continuously until you hit that button?
Correct. That is absolutely correct. So it will, every 2 seconds, it will blink that plus symbol until you click, then it will calculate, return the result back to the first screen.
It might take a while to come around.
Maybe I should make a blackout screen with just the eyes. Okay, well, let's check it out. Okay. And of course, for those of you who want to make this even more fun, you can change the timer interval as a block. So that means you can start with 2 seconds, and then you can multiply like a 0.7 to it every single time. So this way, the blinking will get faster and faster. You can say blink, 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 like that.
But you have to set a variable.
You can refer back to the timer interval. It's a
it's
number
a
itself.
value.
It is a value.
Okay.
So you can just get the value back and do your calculations. Yep. So let's go back to this command line, re-upload. Oh. Uh-oh, insufficient storage. That means I have just run out of space in the emulator. No. Okay, time to uninstall something. Okay, let's get rid of. I thought if you drag it to, there should be one place to uninstall it.
Maybe you have to go to settings.
That would be kind of inconvenient, wouldn't that? Okay, I guess. Well, this is Android 2.3, so we don't get the. Yeah, I guess we can do it this way. Counter. Okay, so I think that's good. We can also uninstall this one. Maybe not. Alright. Let's see if we can install it again. Yep, looks like it's gonna work. Specify 4, 6, click on the button. Yep. Now, of course, you can make this a lot more fun too, by changing the symbol and whatnot.
Time intervals.
So when I click on Homer, which is really a gigantic button, that will actually trigger the return and get back to the first screen with the result of 10. So are there any questions? So even though we are playing with a very simple app to add 2 numbers, you can see how I turned it from a 1-screen application into a 2-screen application. To illustrate, the most important point is how to use a start value and how to start another screen, how to get the start value from the second screen, access it, break out the list into individual parts, do whatever you need to do with it, and then how to transmit the result back in a closed block. Okay, when you use a closed block, you can close with a result value. And after that, in the first screen, you have to use the when other screen closed event to intercept the event of, oh, that screen just closed. Let me check what value it is passing back to me. Okay, so it is simple. It's a very simple app, but yet it illustrates very important concepts when you're writing a multi-screen app. Okay. How many people are planning to use a splash screen in your app? Splash screen, as in like it displays a picture, kind of shows some credit and whatnot. Okay, even if you don't use your screen one, reserve your screen one for your splash screen. Because if you decide, okay, I don't want to use a splash screen, just have your screen one initialized to start up whatever screen you really want to start up in the first place. It's no big deal. But once you use screen one for something, it's irreversible. There's no way to go back and say, oh wait, I need a splash screen to be the first screen. I want this screen one to be the second screen. Unless you're willing to make some surgical operations on the files of the AIA file, there's no way to do that. So that's why even if you don't think you want a splash screen, reserve screen one for splash screen. Okay, because worst case scenario is you don't want it, just have screen one to start up whatever screen you want to start up in the first place. But you have the flexibility in case you need to use it as a splash screen. Is that okay? Yep, go ahead.
You would, on initialization of your screen one, just call screen the next screen.
To open another screen, yep. So that's the worst case scenario. It's no big deal, right? But it does give you the option of, wait, I want to display a splash screen. So now you can have screen one reserved to do the splash screen thing. Yep. All right, so that's telling me that I only got 10 minutes left before noontime. So I'm going to see you guys over at the lab. I don't have any actual outstanding homework assignment at this point, so you guys probably want to spend some more time to think about your project and ask any questions you might have about the stuff that we talk about in class.